Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar, which will give you an overview of emergency preparedness and response under ISO 14001. My name is Pereira da Cruz, and I'm an author at 𝗪𝗲𝗏. I do a lot of ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 consulting and training, and also audit as a lead auditor. So today I'm going to share my thoughts on emergency preparedness and response under ISO 14001. My presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, after which we'll have a 20-minute question and answer session. If you have a question, you don't have to wait for the Q&A session. You can ask it during my presentation. Of course, I'll also answer all of your remaining questions during the Q&A session. We will later send you an email with a link to the recording of this webinar and to the list of articles mentioned. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, so an effective emergency preparedness under ISO 14001 minimizes environmental impact, ensures regulatory compliance, protects interested parties' interests, and maintains business continuity. So this webinar provides practical guidance on clause 8.2 of ISO 14001, linking it with relevant clauses 6.1 and 10.2. So to develop a robust emergency response plan and robust emergency response strategies and continual improvement processes. So this webinar is specifically designed to environmental managers and professionals responsible for implementing and maintaining ISO 14001 who want hands-on guidance for developing and improving emergency preparedness and response plans. Okay, now let's see the agenda. So today we'll discuss the following topics. First, the importance of emergency preparedness and response. So answer the question, why? Then, what ISO 14001 requires about emergency preparedness and response. Then we'll see how to determine potential environmental emergencies, and then develop an emergency response plan. Now, when you have an emergency plan, it's time to train, test, review, and update an improved plan. Now, in the end, we will see the main challenges based on questions received through emails before this webinar. And thank you very much for your questions before the webinar, okay? So, let's go to the why. So, why emergency preparedness matters. So, emergency preparedness is critical for organizations to protect the environment, comply with regulations, and safeguard their reputation. So, effective emergency management is not optional. It is a fundamental responsibility that prevents severe consequences. Organizations need to prevent and mitigate environmental damages, things like uncontrolled spills, leaks, fires, or breakdowns that can lead to long-term environmental harm, contaminating water sources, soil, and air. So that's why it's important. So having a well-structured response plan ensures that incidents are contained immediately, minimizing their impact. So organizations must comply with regulation and avoid legal consequences. Poor emergency response can result in severe penalties, legal action, and even operational shutdowns due to non-compliance with environmental laws. Regulatory bodies expect organizations to have tested and effective response plans. A company's public image is at risk when environmental incidents are mismanaged, so reputational damages. Organizations known for poor emergency handling can face backlash from stakeholders, customers, and the community, leading to loss of business and trust. Now, uncontrolled environmental emergencies can lead to major financial losses due to fines, cleanup costs, higher insurance costs, and operational disruptions. So a proactive emergency preparedness system reduces downtime and financial exposure. Emergency situations such as chemical spills or fires pose direct risk to employees and surrounding communities. So, effective preparedness protects lives by ensuring swift and appropriate responses. Protects lives and protects the environment, okay? And by ensuring swift and appropriate responses. Now, let's see how the different ISO 14001 requirements or clauses are related with this emergency preparedness plan. So you need to determine, or we need to determine, potential or possible emergencies. So figure out what could go wrong in terms of environmental incidents. So clause 6.1 of ISO 14001 planning already asks you to assess your environmental aspects and risks. And this should include determining scenarios like fires, spills, leaks, explosions, etc. that could have an environmental impact. For example, if you store fuel on site, a determined risk might be an accidental fuel spill or tank overflow. And if you use chemicals, a potential emergency could be an uncontrolled chemical release. So consider both probable events like a minor spill and worst-case scenarios like a major leak or fire. Plan and prepare responses, so clause 8.2. So for each significant emergency scenario, determine, plan what you will do if it happens. The standard says you must be prepared to respond to prevent or mitigate environmental impacts. This means developing emergency response plans or procedures. And this plan should detail how to respond. For example, how to contain a spill, evacuate during a fire, or neutralize a chemical leak. And assign, so how to do it, how to respond, and assign clear responsibilities. The response actions should be appropriate to the magnitude of the emergency and its potential environmental impact. So in other words, bigger risks need more robust plans. So you'd have a more elaborate plan for a large toxic spill than for a minor oil drip, okay? So now, implement and equip. So ensure the necessary resources and equipment are in place. So this could include emergency equipment like fire extinguishers, spill containment kits, personnel protective equipment, alarms, and communication systems. So it also includes training the people who will execute the plans. Everyone involved should know their role and how to use emergency equipment. Then we need to test and practice. So don't just file your plan away. Clause 8.2 specifically requires that you periodically test your planned response actions where practicable. So conduct drills, simulations, or exercises to verify that your plans work and that people are familiar with them. The goal is to find out if anything in the plan needs improvement before a real emergency occurs. Now comes response, respond and control. So if an emergency does occur, follow your plan to respond. Contain and control the situation to minimize harm. For instance, isolate an area, shut down equipment, deploy spill barriers, notify authorities if needed, and so. So focus first on actions that address immediate consequences. So for example, stop a leak, extinguish flames. This is essentially the execution of what you've prepared for. Now, when we speak about these plans, we need also to consider clause 6.1.3, so about addresses compliance obligations, because numerous environmental regulations require emergency preparedness measures, such as spill containment, emergency drills, and reporting procedures. So ensuring adherence to these laws is essential for both legal and environmental responsibility. So you test, you respond, and you need to review and improve. So review, learn, improve, train again. So after an incident or a drill, ISO 14001 requires you to review what happened and revise your emergency plans and processes if necessary. So investigate root causes, evaluate what went well or what difficulties arose, and update the procedures accordingly. Now, clause 8.2 is linked to clause 10.2 about incident, investigation, corrective action, so nonconformities. In this case, incident, investigation, and corrective action, meaning any emergency or even a near miss should trigger learning and improvement in the environmental management system. So, continual improvement is key. Over time, your emergency preparedness should get stronger as you learn from exercises and real events. Now, make sure information about emergency procedures is communicated to relevant people. So this includes internal staff and possibly external stakeholders. Train people on their responsibilities. So, for example, there is, for certain emergencies, there's regulation that requires that the incident must be communicated to a certain outside stakeholder. So also maintain documented information to have confidence the plans are carried out as intended. So in practice, this means your emergency response plans should be written down in a manual, a procedure, or a flowchart so they are accessible during an emergency. You should also keep records of training, drills, and any incident reports as evidence that you've implemented and updated your emergency preparedness. Now, I will leave here links to 2 articles that you can check later. Okay, one is how to satisfy emergency response requirements in ISO 14001, and the other one is 5 steps to step up an emergency plan according to ISO 14001. Okay, so I like this slide. Okay, some people don't like it because they say, "Oh, this is a mess." But what I like in this slide is a way of showing that answering or designing or implementing an environmental management system is not just answering to clauses. Okay, it's the beauty of how things are interrelated. Okay, and so the system is a set of interrelated processes or activities like this. Okay, now let's continue. Now let's see the link of clause 8.2 and clause 10.2. Okay, so ISO 14001 emphasizes that emergency preparedness and response, clause 8.2, involves more than just having a plan. It requires continual improvement. This is where clause 10.2 on nonconformity and corrective action becomes essential. So whenever an environmental emergency or near miss occurs, and about the near misses, we need to prepare people to feel free to report these near misses. So whenever an environmental emergency or near miss occurs, clause 10.2 requires us to investigate the incident, determine root causes, and implement corrective actions. By systematically analyzing what went wrong and why, we can refine and update our emergency response procedures to prevent recurrence. So, linking clause 8.2 with clause 10.2 ensures that emergency preparedness is not static. It evolves through continual learning from real incidents and drills. So this proactive approach enhances environmental performance and resilience, ensuring our organization stays compliant and ready for future challenges. So for instance, if a chemical spill happens, despite the current containment measures, an investigation could uncover that employee training was inadequate or that the equipment was defective. Consequently, corrective actions might involve updating training programs, enhancing containment systems, or refining response protocols. Now, let's see how to start. Okay, very practically, how to start, how to determine potential environmental emergencies. Okay, so to effectively manage environmental risks, organizations must determine potential environmental emergencies before they happen. So this proactive approach helps minimize negative environmental impacts and ensures compliance with regulations. So there are several practical ways to determine potential emergencies. One method is conducting hazard determination exercises, where we analyze our processes, our materials, and past incidents to pinpoint possible risks. And by the way, let me tell you, sometimes you may find skeletons, okay, in the closet. You know, secrets or embarrassing facts that someone tries to keep hidden, okay? That's my experience in some organizations, okay? So site inspections and audits are another critical tool. By regularly checking storage areas, pipelines, and emission points, we can detect early warning signs of potential problems. Additionally, engaging interested parties such as employees, emergency responders, and local communities can provide valuable insights into risks we may not have considered. Some common environmental emergencies we need to be prepared for include chemical spills, wastewater discharge issues, air emissions, and storage tank leaks. For instance, a chemical spill could occur due to improper handling, leading to soil and water contamination. So if we anticipate such risks, we can put preventive measures in place, such as secondary containment and staff training. Now, let me show you our ISO 14001 premium documentation toolkit. Okay, so we have this toolkit with this with procedures, guidelines, forms, and we have here this one. So procedures for preparedness and emergency response. And I will show you this procedure. Okay, I will show you also this emergency preparedness and response plan for a leakage, and I will show this evaluation record of response actions testing. Okay, so let me see. Thank you. Here, procedure for preparedness and emergency response. Let's see. So this is a Word document. This is completely customized. Okay, we have here some links also to some articles, so that can help you where we think that the information from the article is really relevant to that part of the text. Now, so we have here the identification of potential accidents and emergencies, emergency response team, declaration of emergency may have different levels, then the treatment in emergency situation. So, for example, here, identification of potential accidents and emergencies and their impact on the environment. So this procedure is the kind of the master that sends people to different plans, you know, to handle different emergency situations. So identification of potential accidents and emergencies and their impact on the environment. Emergency response team, so the composition and the responsibilities. Declaration of emergency, what more? Treatment in an emergency situation, so what needs to be done. I think it's the plan is much more practical. So emergency preparedness and response plan for leakage. Okay, so you have a leakage, so we can have something like, okay, what are the preventive actions? So what we need to do to minimize the probability of this from happening, and if it happens, that there's no surprise. Okay, there's no surprise. No surprising hurdles, making our job of responding more difficult. So preventive, acting in case of leakage, so what needs to be done, okay, the sequence. Perhaps in your particular case, not all bullets will be applicable, so you delete those that are not applicable. And okay, in this case, evacuation, return to the site, and the part about the exercising and testing. So, and we have this example here about how to evaluate a response action testing. Okay, so we have here a set of questions regarding. So this is an example set of questions. If you have a no, okay, you need to consider. So if you need to develop a corrective action, something to improve your response plan. Okay, so you can see the details of this toolkit here. So I leave here the link for the toolkit. Okay. Now let's go, let's see, as an example of an hazard determination exercise. This is one of the things that I like to do a lot when I'm doing this, is because we go walk through the organization. Okay, so one effective way to identify environmental hazards in the facility is to conduct a walkthrough inspection. So by physically observing each process, employees can detect potential risks before they escalate into environmental emergencies. So consider this scenario, okay? Look into the slide. A chemical processing plant specialized in producing industrial solvents and coatings. So here is the process flow chart, okay, of the plant. What the key operational steps are: raw material storage. So we store chemical ingredients in designated areas. Chemical mixing and blending, so combining the raw materials to create the formulations. Reaction and processing. Quality control and testing. Then we have solvent and coating packaging, final product storage, and we have the shipping and distribution. Additionally, the facility has waste and emissions management systems in place, so wastewater treatment, so handling liquid waste from processing, and air emission control, managing gas emissions through filtration and treatment systems. Now, during a walkthrough inspection, you can use a drawing, okay, of the facilities to mark where critical environmental hazards may occur, including chemical spills, fire and explosion risks, so ignition of flammable chemicals, for example, airborne contamination, wastewater discharge failure, so uncontrolled release of untreated wastewater into public drainage system, or causing environmental pollution, equipment malfunction, so breakdown of pollution control systems, for example, and natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, or storms that could compromise chemical storage tanks, leading to hazardous leaks or spills. So I always remember one day in a company, they were manufacturing a product for civil construction. The product is very light, but okay, and there was a big storm. It was raining a lot, raining cats and dogs, and so that product was in the ground, was carried out to the wastewater treatment plant, and there was an overflow, and all the place was after the fence of the organization was with that product. Okay, so natural disasters, what can happen with floods or storms. So by walking through the facility, environmental hazards can be proactively identified and mitigated, ensuring compliance with regulations and safeguarding the environment. And if you use this kind of blueprint of the organization, I recommend use it in you know that when we spoke in the past about slides, presenting slides, but like a transparent polymer sheet. Okay, if you use that, I remember using that with one sheet for each kind of natural disasters, or for contamination, so for equipment malfunction, or for chemical spills, because after that we can split and make different teams responsible for, okay, you're the chemical spills team, okay, take this. You're the fire and explosion risks team, okay, take this. It's a very practical way. I like it very much. Now, so we determined that now we need to develop an emergency response plan. Okay, so once you know what emergencies you need to prepare for, the next step is to create the emergency response plans. And this is let's say, the heart of emergency preparedness. So documenting how you will react when an emergency strikes. So an effective emergency response plan should be clear, accessible, and tailored to the specific scenario. So here are key components typically included in a written emergency response plan. So the scope and potential scenarios, so a description of which emergency the plan cover, okay? So something like, this plan addresses chemical spills in the manufacturing area involving hazardous solvents. Then we have the immediate alerts and alarms, how to raise the alarm or otherwise initiate the response. The response procedure, so the step-by-step actions to be taken for the emergency. So let's say this is a core of the plan, okay? So for example, steps to contain a spill, stop the source, use absorbent booms, etc. Then the roles and the responsibilities, so define a command structure for emergencies, who is in charge, who will carry out specific tasks, include alternates, don't forget, in case someone is absent. Clarity here prevents confusion. So during an emergency, people should know immediately what is my role. What is missing? Okay, resource and equipment list. So identify what tools and resources are available and where to find them. So for example, the location of fire extinguishers, spill kits, first aid kits, emergency power generator, etc. Include contact information for emergency services and contractors like hazmat cleanup specialists in the plan. Now, you may need to have shutdown and evacuation procedures. So if relevant, describe how to safely shut down operations to prevent further danger, like stopping a process, isolating power. Also detail evacuation routes and assembly points for personnel if evacuation is needed. When I think about this shutdown, I also remember working in a chemical industry, and there was a chemical there just to shut down the reaction if this kind of emergency occurred. Now, what we need also is communication protocols, outline how information will be communicated during and after the incident. So this includes internal communication and external, like notifying fire department, environmental agency, or neighboring facilities if necessary. So keep a list of important phone numbers, fire brigade, environmental regulator, company leadership in the plan. And then we have the after action and recovery. So although sometimes covered in a separate document, it's good to mention what to do once the immediate emergency is over. So secure the site, clean up and dispose of waste, reporting requirements, incident investigation, and how to resume normal operations, so the recovery phase. Make sure different types of emergencies have tailored procedures. So one size may not fit all, okay? So a specific chemical spill response plan will differ from a fire emergency plan. For instance, a chemical spill plan might instruct how to neutralize or absorb the chemical and protect storm drains. And finally, get management approval for the plans. So top management should endorse the emergency plans to show their support and provide necessary resources. This also integrates the plans into the overall environmental management system formally. So once approved, communicate the plans to all relevant personnel and make sure they understand their roles. So I leave here two links, okay? One is how to write emergency procedures for ISO 14001 and list of procedures for responding to emergency situations and accidents. Now, we have here a question from John. John asked, what is the best product to use for spill emergency response scenario? And is a spill drill response time bound? Well, so the best product for spill emergencies is, let's say, a type appropriate spill kit. So oil, chemical, or universal, supported by absorbents, drain covers, personal protective equipment, and disposal bags. Okay, so you need to consider the type appropriate to the kind of spill that you may have. While ISO 14001 does not impose a fixed response time, drills should be time sensitive and performance evaluated to ensure the organization can promptly minimize environmental impact. Now, clause 8.2 requires the organization to evaluate the effectiveness of the response. So this includes timeliness. So a good practice, okay, organizations should set internal targets. For example, containment within 5 minutes of detection, and evaluate actual performance against them during drills. Okay, now, so you make the plan, you develop the plan. The plan can be a physical document like a red binder on the shelf, or a digital document with digital documents, be careful that it must be accessible during an emergency, okay? So many companies post critical parts of the plan, like evacuation maps or spill response steps, in prominent locations, okay? Simplicity is key. So in a crisis, responders will not read a dense manual, okay? So use checklists or flowcharts if possible to make guidance quick and clear. And having the right emergency equipment on hand is part of planning. For example, fire extinguishers, spill containment booms, absorbents, and personal protective equipment should be available and maintained. And the emergency plan should list these and their locations so responders can grab what they need without delay. Don't forget regular inspections of this equipment, ensuring extinguishers are charged, spill kits stocked, etc. So should be also part of the preparedness, okay? Now, let's see. Let's examine an example of an emergency response plan for a chemical spill in the storage area. So the response starts with immediate actions, alerting personnel, identifying the spilled substance, and consulting the safety data sheet. Next, we focus on containment and mitigation, so using spill kits and neutralizing agents as appropriate. Then, protective measures, including wearing the correct personal protective equipment and restricting access, are crucial. Once the situation is under control, the spill must be reported to the emergency response team and documented. Follow the designated cleanup procedures and dispose of materials safely. And finally, after the incident, a review should be conducted to evaluate how well the response was handled and to identify any areas for improvement. So this structured approach helps minimize hazards and ensures a safer workplace. So you have now you have an emergency response plan. So having a plan on paper is not enough. Okay, people must know what to do and be able to carry out the procedures. So thus training and regular drills are essential parts of emergency preparedness. So ISO 14001 explicitly requires that organizations provide relevant training or information about emergency response to people under the organization's control. Without regular training, even the best designed plan can fail in practice. Regular training ensures that employees and contractors can respond effectively. The standard also calls for periodic testing of the plans. Together, training and testing build a culture of readiness. So, conducting drills and simulations allows employees and contractors to respond quickly and efficiently during real incidents. It's like trying to follow a recipe on YouTube and at the same time trying to do it. Okay, it's very, very difficult. You must see the video 2 or 3 times and then, okay, perhaps you can do both at the same time. But okay, or what you need to do is you see part of the video and then you do it. Then you see another part of the video and you do it. But we want our action, our response to be fast, to be quick. So we don't want to be stopping the video or stopping, or what needs to be done now? Okay, this one, no. That's why these drills, this training and drills is important. So drills and simulations help identify weaknesses in the emergency response plan. A well-practiced team can minimize risks and damages during real emergencies. And employees are aware of the potential emergencies and the basic procedures for each. So specific team members who have designated roles, so spill response team, evacuation marshal, etc., receive detailed training for those duties. So they need an extra training. So this might include hands-on practice in equipment use, so how to deploy a spill boom or use personal protective equipment, and scenario-based training. So new employees get emergency preparedness training as part of their induction. And contractors or visitors are briefed on relevant procedures like evacuation routes when they come on site. Now, refreshers are provided periodically, at least annually, or whenever something in the plan changes. So people can forget what they learned. So ongoing training or awareness campaigns help keep preparedness front of mind. Okay, now it's easy because we have ChatGPT and others, and we can ask how to do this with some software programs. Okay, because what happens is that we learn, we read how to do this. Okay, but then we stay 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month without doing it, and when it's time to use it again, say, oh, I forgot. Okay, how to do it. No. So that's why this training awareness is important. So to improve readiness, we can use two main training methods. So mock drills and tabletop exercises. Mock drills recreate real emergency situations, helping teams practice their roles under realistic conditions. Tabletop exercises, on the other hand, are discussion-based and help teams refine decision-making processes in a controlled environment. So use creative methods if full-scale drills are too disruptive. Okay, tabletop exercises, so desktop simulations, are a great way to walk through the response steps with a team without actually staging an incident. So for example, gather the key people in the conference room and mentally walk through a scenario, like something like, okay, it's 3 p.m., a chemical tank is leaking, what do you do first? Who do you call? What if that person isn't available? So this can make surface gaps in knowledge or procedure. Train for different emergency types to ensure adaptability. Use varied scenarios. Lastly, emergency response training shouldn't be a one-time activity. Ongoing competence development through regular refresher sessions and inclusion in onboarding programs ensures that employees and contractors remain prepared. These, for example, tabletop exercises can be useful when you have people from different sites, okay, and the organization want to have a similar approach, okay, but don't want that people that are not used to work in a particular site to go there, okay. So we can join people from different sites and do this kind of exercise, and also makes you. It's not so much. It's very important to act, okay, to act by memory, okay. But it's also important to know why we are doing this, and tabletop exercises are good for that, okay. Now. Let's look at a specific example, training and testing an emergency plan for chemical spills in a storage area. So the first step is initial training. So employees must understand the risks and know how to respond correctly. This includes training on using the personal protective equipment and spill containment procedures. And after employees are trained, we proceed to practical drills. A mock spill drill evaluates real-time reactions, while an evacuation exercise ensures effective communication and safe exits. Additionally, containment and cleanup training assist workers in applying the correct response techniques in a controlled environment. Okay, so after each drill, we conduct a performance review. So review drill outcomes and identify areas for improvement. So gather feedback from participants to refine response actions. So this step allows us to identify areas for improvement and refine our emergency plan. Regular training and awareness ensures that employees remain prepared and confident in handling chemical spills safely. About the importance of awareness, so it's the periodic reminder that keeps essential information at the forefront of your mind, okay? That's why awareness is very important. It ensures that when the moment arrives, you don't just know, you remember and act on it, okay? And yesterday I read in a book something like firefighters and other first responders need to be able to do the right thing without much deliberate thinking. They spend enormous amount of time practicing and drilling for emergencies. And then comes this beautiful part, building muscle memory and developing routines that turn smart judgments into gut reactions, okay? In the moment, during the emergency, we want gut reactions, okay? To act fast, to minimize the environmental impact. Now, emergency preparedness is not a one and done effort, it's an ongoing cycle. So after you've developed plans and conducted training and drills, you need to review and refine your emergency response process regularly. So ISO 14001 emphasizes this. The organization must periodically review and, if needed, revise the emergency preparedness procedures, especially after an actual emergency or test. So continual improvement ensures that your plans remain effective and up to date as conditions change. Lessons from past incidents are important. So after drills or exercises, so each drill is a learning opportunity. Gather the participants and discuss. Did everything go as planned? Did people know what to do? Where there are any unexpected hurdles? Okay. Sometimes when I'm auditing, what I see is the organizations keep the same plan, or response plan or emergency response plan for years and years and years. Okay. And even if the plan is okay, you can ask, what about changes in operations? Are there new processes, materials, or equipment? So if the answer is yes, we need to revisit the emergency scenarios. Are there any new chemicals on site? So you may need a new spill response section for it and new training. Sometimes the facility is expanded, so update evacuation routes and maps. Sometimes are there changes in staffing, so ensure roles are reassigned if key people left, or if there are changes in the way things are organized. And also there are regulatory updates should also trigger a review process. So the PDCA cycle is a structured approach to reviewing and updating the plan. So first, we analyze incidents and gather feedback to determine necessary improvements. Then we implement changes and ensure that procedures, roles, and equipment align with new requirements. Next, we test these changes through training and simulations. And finally, we integrate what we learn into future updates, ensuring continual improvement. Last example, so during a recent chemical spill drill, responder discovered that a critical storage area door could not be opened due to a rusted lock. This incident highlighted a major vulnerability in the plan. Okay, so this is an example from my experience. Okay, is something that we only find out about this because we did the drill. Okay, because no one was thinking that, oh, the lock is so rusted that it's very difficult to open or impossible to open the door. So, okay, what we need to do, immediate fix. Response, the lock was replaced immediately and similar fixtures across the site were inspected. More importantly, the emergency plan was updated to include routine inspections of access points. Training programs were adjusted to ensure responders verified the emergency access as part of the readiness drills. And finally, a follow-up drill was conducted to confirm that these updates worked in practice. So this example shows how continual improvement strengthens emergency preparedness. Okay? Now, before this webinar, we received some questions. I will answer them with specific slides during the Q&A. Okay? Those questions were, what critical tabletop exercises can be conducted? How to test emergency plans? And what are the roles and responsibilities of the involved? So, but I will answer that during the Q&A. Okay. Now, let's see our conclusion. So, to conclude, by proactively determining risks, training teams, and continually improving, you'll ensure a robust emergency response under ISO 14001 that safeguards both the environment and the organization. And to learn how, you can use 𝗪𝗲𝗏's internal auditor courses. So here's the link with more details. So I leave here the link for the internal auditor courses. I'll also send you now the meeting link to schedule a call with our toolkit expert. He'll explain you how toolkit works and show you any document you would like to see. So here you have the toolkit expert meeting link. Okay. Okay. So now Okay, so I leave you the links to some of our courses. So the ISO 14001 Foundations course and our lead auditor course. Okay, now, before we begin with the question and answer session, just to mention that you can also ask me anything about ISO 14001 directly. Just send me an email and I'll answer as quick as I can. And if you have to leave before this Q&A session is over, please do fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar. Okay, let's see. So we have a question here from Carrie. How will the potential pending updates in January 2026 impact these clauses? Okay, there are very different opinions or very different versions based on the source. But from those sources that I trust more, I don't see, but I may be wrong, but I didn't see any impact on this particular clause 8.2, okay? But again, I may be wrong. Now, let's see. Okay, so Nader asked, clarify the roles and responsibilities of individuals or teams involved. So clause 8.2 involves top management for strategic oversight, the environmental managers for system implementation, line managers or operational application, and all employees for execution. Okay, so each must know their role in preventing, reacting to, and learning from environmental emergencies. So top management, okay, they need to approve the emergency preparedness plan, so allocate resources, support periodic review of the plan's effectiveness, ensure roles are assigned and communicated. Then we have the environmental manager, so lead the development, maintenance, and testing of the emergency preparedness and response procedures. We have the department managers or supervisors, so they implement procedures locally within their teams or areas, ensure team members are trained and aware of their specific duties during an emergency, report incidents or near misses and participate in drills, and provide feedback on the practicality of emergency response plans. And then we have the employees or operators, so they follow emergency procedures as trained, so react promptly and safely during an emergency, participate in drills and feedback sessions, and report potential hazards or weaknesses in emergency preparedness. And some organizations may have emergency response teams. Okay, so if you have if an emergency response team is established, so you may think that okay, they must act as first responders in specific scenarios. They need to coordinate evacuation or containment actions. They communicate with external emergency services. They assist with post-event analysis and learning. Okay, so this one about the roles and responsibilities of individuals and teams involved. Let's see. Another question is from Vandana. Vandana asked two questions. The first one is, what are some critical tabletop exercises an organization need to conduct? Okay, so first, under clause 8.2 of ISO 14001, organizations are required to test and evaluate their preparedness for potential environmental emergencies. Okay, but tabletop exercises are a practical and effective way to meet this requirement, but they are not mandatory. Okay, so they are one of the tools available. So they allow teams to simulate and evaluate their response in a controlled, discussion-based setting. So the following scenarios are relevant for clause 8.2 and should be prioritized based on the organizational environmental aspects and risks. So we may have chemical spill or hazardous substance release, so test containment, reporting, and cleanup procedures. Fire resulting in air emissions or hazardous runoff, so evaluates coordination with emergency services and environmental mitigation. Wastewater system failure or unauthorized discharge, loss of containment of fuels or oils, and, for example, severe weather event with environmental impact, so examines the resilience of infrastructure and emergency preparedness. So this one about some critical tabletop exercises. The other question from Vandana is, and what are the most essential steps that need to be captured in the documentation? Okay. So I don't know if these are the most essential steps, but at least I think they are relevant. So the objective of the exercise, so clarifies the intent. The scenario description, okay. The environment describes the environmental emergency used in the simulation. The list of participants and roles. The discussion outcomes, so documents how teams responded, decisions made, and time taken. Identified gaps and weaknesses. Corrective and improvement actions. Follow-up responsibility, so assign actions with deadlines and responsible persons. And approval and record retention, demonstrates control over emergency response planning and records. And okay, now we have another question. It's from Abel. Abel asks, how do you test the emergency plan? So you test the emergency plan through plan drills, simulations, or tabletop exercises that recreate plausible emergency scenarios. So this test must be periodic and documented. Okay. You need to evaluate effectiveness. So did people respond correctly? Were procedures followed? Were environmental impacts controlled? That's perhaps the most important part. So were environmental impacts controlled, minimized, followed by review and updates to the plan based on what worked or failed. And Abel asked another question, was, is the emergency plan the same as a business continuity plan? No, they are not the same. Okay, so the emergency plan under ISO 14001 focuses on immediate response to environmental incidents. Okay, immediate response. The business continuity plan is much broader. It covers recovery of critical business operations after various types of disruption, IT failures, natural disasters, okay, and often includes health and safety, IT, finance, and supply chain continuity, okay? So it's not the same thing, okay? So let's see. Any more questions? Okay, let me see. Okay, no, there are no more questions. All right, so let's go and all right. So I think I've covered all your questions. So let's wrap up the webinar. As I mentioned, this 1-hour webinar was intended to give you a general overview of the emergency preparedness and response under ISO 14001. Not to go into a detailed discussion. For that, please take a look at our blogs. You can ask me anything about ISO 14001 directly by email. You can also download this presentation deck from our website or take a look at video tutorials and documentation templates. We'll send you the email with all necessary links. And yes, Andrew, these slides are available right now, and you will receive the link to the recording of this webinar, okay? So finally, if you join this webinar through Zoom, you'll see a short survey. So I will kindly ask to you to spend a minute to fill it in. The recording of this presentation will be available in a few hours. You will receive a link to the recording. And if you join the webinar through LinkedIn and YouTube, you will receive a link to the short survey now and the link to the presentation. You'll be posted in our, so the link to the presentation will be posted on our event page in a few minutes. That will be all. Thank you for your participation, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.